Hello, Wendy Dabrusin, divorce lending specialist and mortgage loan officer with Benchmark Mortgage, and I am a certified divorce lending professional with the Divorce Lending Association. So today I'm very excited to have Jaime Mattox, and Jaime is a life coach, among other things. So Jaime, why don't you jump right in and just tell us a little background knowledge about yourself and your practice?
Yes, thank you for having me, Wendy. I'm excited to be here. My background, who I am, what I do, and how I got here. I was raised by a single mom and learned from a very young age that you have to struggle. You have to work hard and struggle, and you always have to do it on your own.
Yes.
As a stay-at-home mom of 17 years, I happily and willingly gave up every part of myself for my family. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at 24. That was hard. I was alone and I struggled.
Yeah.
28, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Although I had people around me, I
Yeah.
was still scared and alone and I struggled. So you see a reoccurring theme here. Like from childhood, I learned to work hard, to struggle, and do it on your own. And pretty much that's what I've done for most of my life.
Yeah.
So I created New Soul Rising, my health and wellness and coaching business, because I'm really passionate about people knowing that they don't have to struggle and they don't have to do it on their own.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, so you became a life coach. Like, what was your beginning thoughts? Okay, I'm just going to do this. You said you'd gone through a divorce yourself?
I had actually, this is becoming a health and life coach was one of the many blessings of the pandemic. You know, we all have all of our sad pandemic stories, and I have my sad pandemic stories too. But somewhere shortly after my divorce is when everything shut down. And I was home with my kids and I was sad and I was depressed and everything that I had planned on just got pulled right out from under my feet.
Yeah.
And what happens with me when I go into that introspective place, well, eventually I do find my way. And I found my way to becoming a health and life coach. And the best part about being a life coach is I get to take not just my tools that I've learned from all of my trainings, but my real life experience and merge them together.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? I feel
Yes.
like
So
a
it
little bit.
sounds like you going through the experience alone and experiencing all of, the confusion, the pain, the drama, um, the trauma as well. You didn't really have anybody like yourself, and you probably didn't even know there was an option, right? And so you're like, I don't want anybody to go through, and that's the same with my business, doing divorce lending. uh I don't want anybody else to go through that experience alone. I want them to know that there's help. There's someone who can guide them through this, other than, a lot of people think, all they do is contact a family law attorney and that's all they need. And there's so many more things that are involved than just the legal aspect of it. So while I focus my divorce lending practice on divorcing clients, I don't ever advocate for divorce. If there's a solution to keep the marriage together, what are some advice or talking points? Like if someone just comes to you at the very beginning, is like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I really just want some guidance on this, some direction, and I don't know where to go. What are some talking points if they're just in the beginning stages?
Sure. So I have a lot of people come to me that are thinking about divorce, considering divorce, really unhappily married. And when I tell you people just come to me, they come to me. They're not even always potential clients. Oftentimes these are friends.
Yeah.
So I have several pieces of advice or information that I give to everyone that comes to me, because I agree with you. Anytime a marriage can be saved, anytime a family can stay together, that's ultimately what I want. I want people to know that they don't have to struggle and they don't have to do it on their own. Number one, first and foremost, do the work on yourself. And that looks a little bit different for everyone, but hire a coach, find a counselor, find a therapist. I'm going to repeat some of these things over and over and over. The thing is, if you are not happy with who you are, you're not going to be happy whether you're married or divorced.
Yeah.
When I tell you, like, deep dive and do the work, try all different modalities. I mean, if you are a hippy dippy person, try Reiki, try yoga. If you are more traditional, read a self-help book. I've got a really great recommendation here. I'll talk about it in just a minute. But really just do the inner work on yourself, because I cannot stress enough, if you are not happy with who you are not going to be happy whether you're married or divorced.
Yeah.
Now, one of two things is going to happen when you do your inner work. Either you and your spouse or partner are just naturally going to come back together. Your partner or your spouse is going to see you improving your communication skills and showing up for yourself like you never have before. And they are either going to jump on board and join you, and you're going to just naturally come back together, or it is going to be very obvious that the gap is getting wider.
Yeah.
So by doing the work on yourself, you are going to know without a shadow of a doubt whether your divorce is imminent or whether your marriage has a chance.
Yeah.
Another thing that I tell everyone, do not have an affair.
Yeah.
Do not have an affair. If you are so unhappy in your marriage that you are to the place where you are ready to have an affair, just go. Just go. People don't often get into affairs thinking, oh, I'm going to go have an affair today. I hear that it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But it makes everything worse.
Oh,
It
yeah.
makes everything worse.
Well,
So
you can't work on yourself while there's another, outside influence. You're not in it anymore at that point, to me. And, I've been through it, and, I know at the beginning when you're just starting to think about it, it's like, you don't really think about, what am I doing wrong? Or how can I fix this? You're thinking about what the other person's doing, and then you're reacting to that. And then it's just feeding off of each other. And it's such a toxic thing, personally, because, then when I actually went through, it's called divorce recovery. It was just a workshop. It was back in like 98 or 99. But I just remember, realizing that, hey, I might have contributed some things to this as well. It was infidelity, but that's beside the point. Not my own, but yeah, but anyway, that's another story. But so you just lose trust. And anyway, so there's so many aspects to that. But I do like the stressing the point of working on yourself, because if you're not, if you don't fix what went wrong with it with yourself personally, you're going to bring that into the next relationship. You've got to deal with it. You've got to deal with how, how you can communicate differently, or just be happy with yourself before you can be happy with someone else. I tell that to my kids all the time. So let's going back to so I love all of that, but going back to infidelity. So someone, that's hard to get past. I always say, once you lose trust, you can never gain it back. Have you had people be able to get through that successfully and stay together?
I do know, yes, people. I have friends that one, the wife had an affair, and one, actually I have multiples. Yes, it is possible. It is possible. I know one person, and this is going back 20 plus years. She found herself in a situation where she had an affair, and it actually was the kind of shakeup that her marriage needed for them to really realize exactly what you just said a moment ago, that both parties have responsibility in them getting to where they got to, and that's a big one. And also, they both realized how important their family, like their relationship was, and how important their family was, and how important staying together and working through it. And I mean, here we are at least 20 years later, and they are so happily married. And they will both tell you that if we had not gone through that hard time all those years ago, we wouldn't be here today. However, most people, it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
If my husband would have cheated on me, which he did not, and I didn't cheat either, infidelity was not our issues. Um, but I don't think I would have been able to trust again.
Yeah.
Some people can. Some people can do all of the work on both sides and really recommit to each other and make it work, and others can't.
Yeah. So if someone, let's just say, I'm not hypothetical, but this happens a lot. Um, let's say, I'm not picking on the men, but let's just say the husband cheated, just for example, and but felt really guilty about it, but also his heart wasn't still in the marriage. His heart was with her. And but he wanted to show that he's trying and going to counseling and all that, but could tell that it really wasn't going to work because he kept having the affair even during all of this counseling. So if in that case, if someone decides to, okay, I'm leaving due to infidelity, emotion, or mental emotional abuse, that type of thing, how do you help someone through that?
Sure. Okay. So anytime we find ourselves in a failed relationship, whether there's infidelity or abuse or not, what happens is our sense of self is diminished. So that's where we begin. Now,
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. It is my job to meet my clients where they are. So there's not a cookie cutter recipe for, oh, your husband cheated on you. We're going to go A, B, C, D, and then you're going to be fine.
Right.
It's my job to meet with you and see exactly where you are. But what we would start with in that situation is really coming back to yourself and learning how to love yourself and trust yourself. We would build your self confidence, because that's what it all boils down to.
Yeah.
You lose your self of trust. You lose yourself of your. It's not uncommon for people to lose their sense of self in marriage, period, let alone when there's external factors.
Yeah.
So we would just really, really double down on the self-love, the self-worth, the self-trust, the self-compassion and forgiveness.
Yeah. That's awesome. So when you I like how you said you like to meet them where they are. So you don't, like, if somebody says, I'm going through a divorce, I'm leaving him, you don't try to talk them out of it. You just kind of like try to support them and help them to understand where they are, and for you to understand where they are on how you can help them, right, move forward with whatever their decision is, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's just say, okay, so you help them throughout any stage, including post-divorce, right? So once they're finally, it's over, they've signed everything, everything's been divided how it needs to be. Their work really is just starting at that point to rebuild their lives. So you also help them at that point, right?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. And then, so what are there any specific clients you've worked with that are memorable that you can, in any stages?
Sure. Oh, I have a great one for this. I mean, I really do have a great one for this. If you don't mind, I'll step back just one
Yeah.
moment. Um, I, it is Absolutely my pleasure to meet clients where they are. That is what I do. And I do not tell people what to do. I have a certain set of skills and questions where I walk people to their own answers. So, I mean, think about it. Have you ever had a time in your life where somebody told you what to do and you're like, okay, okay, okay. And then finally you tried it and you're like, yeah, it worked. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
But
it's
then,
got to be your own. I've learned that. I mean, and my example is from I need to work out. This was like years ago. Need to start working out. And somebody would tell me you needed to do this. You didn't. I just it had to be my own decision, and it had to be on my terms.
yes.
So
So
thank
you get to your own answers.
yeah,
You own it more. It's more important to you. It's more impactful, and you're more likely to continue to do the work when someone walks you to your own answers.
right.
The thing with post divorce, and again, I speak as much from personal experience as I do from all of my trainings, there are challenges that are going to arise. And it's really nice to have someone by your side, holding your hand or giving you the support and encouragement you need to keep going when you hit that resistance, when you hit those challenging situations. And there's a lot of neuroscience here too. So when we think about the neuroscience of the brain, it's the brain's job to keep us safe.
Yeah,
So all change feels unsafe. So here you are, you're no longer married. You may or may not live in the house you've lived in forever. You may or may not drive the same car. You may or may not have your kids every day. That your whole life has changed. So what I do is I offer like real life support. Like, okay, what comes next? Okay, you get to do all of these things. You get to show up for yourself in ways that you never have before. So you really have more of a system to follow, but you also have someone who's been through it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So before we get onto that, your memorable client, I want to backtrack. When you're going through this, you know, talks of maybe them getting into another relationship. I think it's important because what I was told way back, 20 something years ago was until you finish your work, you don't need to have any other relationships. You don't need to date. You don't need to be talking to anybody because you're just going to jump into it. Right. So do you recommend that like at a certain, like what point do you recommend that it's, I mean, everybody's going to be different, right? But what point do you recommend that to start maybe looking at getting on whatever dating website or whatever, that getting back into a relationship if they're ready? Is it when they're ready or when because a lot of people just want somebody, and I guess part of your work is helping them to know that they don't need somebody. Yes, relationships are great. It's always good to have a life partner and all that, but what are your recommendations on that?
okay, so I have very strong opinions about all of this, but they're my opinions. So I want
Right.
to be very clear that this is my opinion.
Okay.
It is my opinion that when you come out of any long-term relationship, that you give yourself not only the time that you need to heal, but the time you need to grieve.
Right.
Grieve your past life, grieve your marriage, grieve the loss for your kids. Check in with your kids. If you happen to be divorced and you have kids, make sure that they're okay. And if they're not okay, be the support system that they need in ways of like finding them the help they need. So often when we go through a divorce, we're so wrapped up in, oh, I feel this or I feel that, or I'm angry about this or I'm angry about that, or I just want this, and blah, 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 and we don't even think about the kids.
Yeah.
Or so many people accidentally totally miss this step that if you have a family of four, guess what? All four of you just went through that divorce, not just you and your former spouse.
Yeah.
So I definitely say take an appropriate amount of time, and that is determined by you, to do your own inner healing work. Yes, go through the grieving process. And when it comes to dating, Most people don't need to date post-divorce. What they need is a full social life.
Yeah.
Go reconnect with your friends.
Yeah.
Um, Join social clubs. Follow your passions.
Yeah.
So much of the work that I do is empowering people to discover who they are, what they love, what they're passionate about, and how they want to spend the rest of their lives. So when we hop from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship, we tend to just drag all that baggage along and we keep getting the same thing over and over and over. Well, why do I always pick the bad guys? Or why do I always pick women like this? Well, you may not have taken enough time to stop and pause and figure out what you really want.
Yeah.
And I also recommend to people to date themselves before they date.
Yeah.
Date, take yourself out to a nice dinner. Take yourself to the movies. Really get to know yourself so that when you do meet someone and want to bring them into your life, it's not because they're filling a need.
Right.
It's because they're adding a benefit to your life.
Right. And I think a lot of people do that to just feel that need of feeling loved, because they're just so down and they just feel so awful about themselves.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point about the kids, because that's one thing that I do remember. I was very adamant that, I probably protected them too much, but they were all that I was focused on. I'm not going to talk bad about him. They're not going to know any of the details. It's just, okay, daddy lives here, mommy lives here. And, so I feel like that's more healthy. I mean, because kids they don't understand. They don't need to be brought into that. Right. So I'm sure you also help people on how to deal with the kids as well. Right.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to one of your memorable situations that might kind of help some other people.
Sure. And this is just a fun story. This is a fun story and it's relevant to what we're talking about.
Okay.
So last year in June, I was in Target and I put my card in the thing to pay backwards or upside down or something. And I'm just standing there waiting on the machine. And finally the cashier's like, "Oh no, ma'am, we need to switch it around." And I was like, "Uh-oh." Here I am, and I'm delaying the line, just so I made a funny comment about my head not being in the game, and everybody in line laughed, and I finished my checkout. And I said, "Okay, everybody, I'm a life coach. So for the delay that I caused today, here's a life tip." And I can't even remember what life tip I gave, but everybody's like, "Oh, cool, thank you." And like everybody's involved in the conversation. So I take my receipt, I take my card, I take my stuff, and I stop between the double glass doors to take off my sweater. And the lady behind me in line comes chasing after me. "Wait, wait, wait, you're a life coach. I need to talk to you." So we stopped and we talked in between the double glass doors in Target. She said, "I have been praying for somebody to talk to. And then here you are, a life coach in front of me in line." So right there in Target, I booked her breakthrough session. During like 5 minutes into her breakthrough session, she blurted out, "I've been married for 40 years and I want a divorce. I'm done. I want a divorce. This is it."
Wow.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. That's a lot to unpack. So fast forward to about a month ago, we hugged each other. She was crying. I was crying. She had just celebrated her 41st wedding anniversary. They are as happy as they've ever been, if not happier. And she hugged me and she said, "Jaime, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be married today. I wouldn't have just celebrated my 41st wedding anniversary." And I said, "Well, Donna, it was actually you that did the work. It
Yeah.
was you that did the work. I just helped you get there."
Yeah.
But, so I love that story. That is one of my biggest success stories as a
Yeah.
coach, that I was at least a contributing factor in a marriage being saved.
Yeah.
That one was fun. That
That,
one was.
I mean, that's so awesome when I mean, it's got to feel good when you're, make such an impact on somebody's life.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I am so happy that I have you on here because I haven't really talked to a life coach yet. So and you're located in Austin. Now, do you work, this podcast is nationwide. We're gonna have to wrap it up soon, but it is nationwide. So do you work nationwide or do you just work face to face? Do you do a lot of Zoom? What is your situation there?
I actually work internationally. I
Okay.
have a client in Australia. I have a client in Mexico. I have a client in Canada. I have clients that come to my living room. It's not necessarily my choice. I choose, like, I prefer to work on Zoom, but I work with people all over the world.
That's
And,
awesome. So
and
I do have one more question before we wrap up. Is there any one important lesson that you've learned throughout your career?
it's multifaceted. And yes, I struggled my whole life. I didn't know how to ask for help. That I didn't know how to ask for the help that I needed. I didn't know three things. I call them my three C's. They are choose, challenge, and create. So, what I want everyone to know, you do not have to do it on your own. You do not have to struggle. You literally have the power to choose each and everything you have in your life and each and everything you don't. You have the power to challenge each and every story you are telling yourself because, like we were talking about earlier, there's always a different perspective. There's always, you know, there's no marriage that ever fails that it's typically like I did everything perfectly and you screwed everything up. That's how we feel when we're going through it. But when we actually stop and challenge the stories we're telling ourselves, we really do get a new perspective, more insight. And we have the power to create exactly the lives that we want.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. That's definitely impactful and powerful. So I appreciate all that. And I appreciate you taking your time with us. Well, first of all, tell us where someone can reach you if they were looking for a life coach or just wanting more information.
sure. I would love to carry on this conversation with anyone who's listening that's curious. I make it very easy to book a complimentary breakthrough session with me. If you visit my website, newsoulrising.com, click book now. It'll take you directly to my scheduler. It'll even send you a Zoom link. And I'd also like to invite everyone to follow New Soul Rising on Instagram. I
Okay.
have so much fun creating content on Instagram. And again, I'm international. I reach people all over the world. And there's lots of great tips and hints on, from mindfulness to mindset to brain training. And I would just love for you to follow me there and visit my website if you want more information or you want to contact me.
That's awesome. Thank you. I mean, I'm sure we could have just carried this conversation for at least an hour, but I do have to end it. But any final thoughts that you want to share with everyone today?
Oh, final thoughts. Final thoughts. There's always another way.
Yeah.
Always another way. I will say I did bring my book Conscious
Yeah.
Catherine Woodward Thomas with me. I read this book times. Conscious Uncoupling.
Okay.
I read this book with my ex-husband before we were divorced. We attempted to consciously uncouple for two, and then that turned into conscious uncoupling for one, and then it turned back into conscious uncoupling for two. So, the first couple years post-divorce wasn't perfect. And now we're at a place where we get along and we have family dinners and we show up for our kids and we're nice to each other.
Yeah.
So just stay curious. Stay curious. Remember what you love about yourself. Remember what you love about your partner. I think so often we get we get to where we are so slowly that we don't realize maybe how much we're on autopilot and how much, even like negative or unwanted thoughts dictate our experience. Remember what you loved about your person.
Yeah.
Remember, like, and how do they contribute to your family?
Yeah. That's
Remember
awesome.
the good. I think we forget to honor what's going well in our relationship and we just focus on what's going bad.
Yeah.
So remember the good. Always remember the good. Celebrate the good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. That was great info. So I really appreciate you. And everybody reach out to Jaime if you guys need some advice or just follow her on Instagram. Thank you so much.